Chris Christie spoke this week to New Hampshire's Right of Center Coalition, a kind of big tent conservative gathering space that has rolled out the welcome mat for high-profile Republicans who want to connect with the Granite State. Of course, the former New Jersey governor did quite a bit of that on his own as a presidential candidate in 2015 and 16, and perhaps one day he'll take another shot at the White House. Governor Christie is our guest this morning on Close Up. Thank you for joining us, Governor.
My pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
So Republicans are still trying to come up with the right approach to taking on President Joe Biden. It's been a struggle for anyone opposing him to try and define him differently. So how do you change that? How do you win?
You tell the truth. And the public deserves the truth about what the president is doing. And he put forward a $1.9 trillion COVID relief package, which only had 10% of that money spent on COVID relief. Now he's proposing an infrastructure plan, which only 24% of it is infrastructure. There's $400 billion in that plan that increases the pay of home health care workers, but not based upon whether they're qualified or doing a good job, only based upon whether or not they join a union. And now he puts forward what he calls the American Families Plan, which he talked about this week in his speech to Congress. And think about some of the things that are in that plan. One, you can get unemployment now. 75% of your salary if this bill passes. If you quit your job, you don't even have to worry about getting fired or being laid off, which is what unemployment was supposed to be for. If you quit your job for good cause, it says. Well, this administration defined a good cause. If your feelings are hurt, they'll call that good cause. Why would anybody go to work if they could get 75% of their salary not going to work? I mean, these are the kind of things that he's doing to try to make government control our economy and control our lives. And I'd ask the people in New Hampshire, do you really want the government controlling our economy and controlling our lives?
You've said that the president is, quote, lying when it comes to that infrastructure package because of the way he's talking about it and trying to shoehorn those things in there that are not traditional infrastructure. I'm curious, what's the difference between what you're calling out and sort of the traditional way of spinning things in Washington?
Well, listen, I'm just going by the rules that the media established under President Trump. I mean, I can't even begin to count how many times they used the word lie or lying when it regarded statements that President Trump made. And look, sometimes the things that President Trump said weren't true. Sometimes they were, and they were mischaracterized. But the fact is that that's no longer out of bounds now, using those phrases. And what the President Biden is saying is untrue. He's saying it's an infrastructure plan. It is not an infrastructure plan. Not with all the other spending that's in there. And he wants to try to fool the American people who support infrastructure improvements, as do most Republicans. And the evidence of that is that the Republicans came forward with a really robust infrastructure plan of their own that they proposed in Congress this past week. And that's what the president should be doing. Rebuilding our roads, our highways, our bridges, our tunnels, our electric grid, our water systems, broadband. Those are the things. Not building 500,000 chargers for electric cars across the country when that type of expenditure is not even close to necessary.
You're known for telling it like it is, and you want to hold President Biden to account. But I'm curious what you're going to do if you're out and about at Republican events in the future and, base activists come up to you and they say, well, Governor Christie, that attack on the Capitol, that was a false flag operation, or that was Antifa. Are you going to call that kind of stuff out or just let it slide?
Absolutely. I already have. I was on TV January 6th saying that, in fact, the president was responsible for what happened on Capitol Hill on January 6th. He incited it not only that day with the speech he made that day, but in everything he was saying after the election, trying to convince people that the election was rigged. But yet we've seen no evidence yet that it's rigged. And in fact, his lead lawyer, Sidney Powell, has now said in court that no reasonable person could have believed that what she said about the voting machines was true. So believe me, you covered me all through the time I was running for president in 15 and 16. You've watched me on TV on the ABC affiliate right up there that you work for the last 3 years as a contributor. I supported the president when he deserved and merited support. I criticized him when he deserved to be criticized. That's the kind of straight talk and the truth that people in America deserve.
Back to President Biden's agenda here. One of the underlying issues through all of this is federal spending. I'm curious what you think about the level of credibility that Republicans have with voters on federal spending, because when President Trump was there with unified control of the government, they had that shot and they didn't take it. Federal spending still exploded. So do Republicans have credibility still on this issue?
Well, I think it depends on who the Republican is. But, for instance, when I was governor of New Jersey, state spending went up 5% total in 8 years. But let's be honest about what happened in Washington. First of all, there's a big difference between cutting taxes. That's not spending. That's letting people keep their money so they can spend it rather than having the government spend it. But the second part is that you're absolutely right. The Republican Congress and President Trump failed in terms of controlling spending. And we have to be willing as Republicans to admit that and make the case for why we need to do it differently if we get a chance to be in power again.
You had a particularly bad bout of COVID-19. I'd like to know, what's your perspective on vaccination, and why do you think so many people in the GOP are deciding not to get vaccinated?
Listen, I think people have legitimate questions and that need to be answered. People want to be educated, not indoctrinated. And so I tell people the facts that 4 times the number of people went through clinical trials to test these vaccines than go through every other prescription drug that you're taking right now to help your health. That these vaccines, therefore, are safe and effective. And you've seen very, very little complications from the vaccines with the now tens of millions of people in the United States and hundreds of millions around the world that have taken these vaccines. This is the way I like to analogize it to folks. Being vaccinated is like putting your seatbelt on. It doesn't guarantee you that if you get in an accident, you won't be seriously injured or killed, but it makes it much, much less likely. And I would say this to folks. I had COVID-19. I spent 7 days in the intensive care unit. It's a very random disease, random in how you get it and then how it treats you. I got it in what was supposed to be the safest place in the world, in the White House, while I was doing debate prep with President Trump. And the way it affects people, I have 2 relatives who died in the last 3 months from COVID, who were both younger and had no previous medical conditions. So, this is not the kind of situation where we can really predict how this goes. The vaccine helps to protect you like a seatbelt does, and it also protects others because it makes you much less likely to be able to transmit the disease.
I'm interested in your perspective on a debate we're having here in New Hampshire right now. Do you support government efforts to suppress the use or teaching of critical race theory in diversity training?
Look, I think that right now we're having too much of politics in the classroom. I can tell you in New Jersey, I have a relative of mine who his daughter was being taught the American dream, myth or reality. And she had to write a paper on whether it was a myth or reality from documents given by her teacher. But yet, when I saw the documents given by the teacher, the documents only supported it being a myth, not a reality. Look, we have too much politics in the classroom, and we got to get it out of there. We have to be teaching kids the facts, and we have to give them the opportunity to come to their own judgments regarding political philosophy and that type of approach. And I just don't believe that politics belong in the classroom. They weren't there in great measure when I went to school, and I think it's a big mistake what's going on right now across all types of political issues that are in this country right now.
We got one of those only in Washington headlines a couple of weeks ago. They said your friends believe that you are going to run for president in 2024. These friends, is their assessment on the mark?
It's great to have lots of friends. It's less great when they do too much talking, especially to the media. But what I'll say to you is, look, I've said all along that I would give consideration to running in 2024, but it's much too early to make that judgment. And so I'm not going to make any judgment right now. I have not made any judgment. But what I do care about is making sure that I speak out on the issues that are important to me and important to the country. And I have that platform to speak out on important issues on ABC almost every Sunday. And I'm going to continue to speak out on those issues. And I'm going to call President Biden out when I think what he's doing is untruthful and bad for the country. And I think that's the obligation of every citizen to do it if you're so inclined. And whether that means I'll run for president or not is a decision we'll make a couple of years from now, not now.
And you went all in on the New Hampshire way of doing the primary back in 2015 and 2016. Didn't quite work out for you the way that you wanted, although you did score an all-time takedown of Senator Marco Rubio in that debate, of course. A lot of Democrats believe that the primary system should change, that New Hampshire and Iowa should no longer be first. But specific to New Hampshire, do you agree? Should things be shaken up on the Republican side?
No, I think New Hampshire should remain the first in the nation primary. I think that the way you can do politics in New Hampshire gives you the best opportunity to let the voters get to know you personally, directly. The voters in New Hampshire care deeply about this process, and they spend a lot of time getting to know the candidates. It didn't work out for me last time, but that doesn't mean that I think the process was wrong or bad. I think the process was actually good and something I enjoyed. I did over 100 town hall meetings in New Hampshire when I was running for president, and I wouldn't take one of them back.
I do want to, before we wrap up here, sneak in one foreign policy question. Is the free world just going to let Alexei Navalny be killed by Vladimir Putin, or is there something the United States and the rest of the Western world can do about this?
Listen, we have this kind of thing going on all over the world. It's not just Alexei Navalny, who I am concerned about, and who I think we should be expressing our outrage to the Russians every day and working with our allies to come up with appropriate sanctions against what they're doing. But also, you have murder going on every day in China. Every day in China, in concentration camps, that needs to be stopped. And we need to stop doing regular business with China while they're engaging in that type of conduct. And so we need a much tougher foreign policy. I think this is a place where President Trump could have been tougher in these areas. And I think it's a place where President Biden has not yet shown any toughness either. Alexei Navalny is someone who should have the right to speak his mind. And the fact that the Russians not only are not permitting that, but are putting him in a situation where he could lose his life is completely unacceptable and antithetical to what we believe human rights are that are God-given.
All right, Governor Chris Christie, thank you for joining us here on Close Up. We appreciate the time.
Always love being on the show. Thanks for having me.